Alright, hey guys, Simon here and welcome back to our Minecraft design school. So today we are on a server with Martin. Anyway, he calls himself Marty and this is his build there behind the tree. Interesting, the path starts behind the tree so you kind of come around and see it. But he's got quite a long message, so let's just read that. He says, "Dear Simon, I'd like to show off my build as an example that others can learn from. I don't really have questions as I have thought a lot about what went wrong and your previous tutorials in this series have confirmed some of what I concluded." He doesn't have questions. But he seems to be saying that, he's kind of asked himself questions and he's kind of come up with some answers himself, so he's not asking me anything. But of course we can always, we'll see what happens. So he says, "The original idea I went in with was of an old civilization that was once grand and elegant, but through the years things had to become more simplistic. The buildings were to show some of its former glory, but definitely be more stripped down while still being elegant. I wanted there to be a tower or spire that was the main focus of the grounds. An atrium would be attached to it to have tall trees, water, features and gardens. Surrounding the grounds were to be tall stone houses that matched the elegant style but were nevertheless surrounded by farms and other signs of industry, as a token to the fact that the civilization has been forced to live more simply." Okay, so he's got a backstory, and out of that backstory, he's got some architectural themes and ideas out of it. So that's useful as well. You kind of come up with the setting, and that setting informs what you build, right? So then he says, "My main mistakes were first not planning my buildings to be big enough." Well, that's common, but it's something that over time you get better at as you become more experienced, as you keep building and you realize, oh, that's too small, so the next time you build a bit bigger, and then if it's still too small, the next time you build a bit bigger. So as long as you're aware of this and you improve, or you try to improve each time, then eventually you get the scale right. Eventually you'll get to a point where you look at a space and you say, okay, I can fit something like this into this, because you have got the accumulated experience. So it's not something that, it's you should think about it as you're building, and if you see a problem, you should think about it. But don't worry about it too much, because, as long as you keep kind of trying out different sizes until you get it right, then eventually you'll pick up how big you need things. And second, he says, not surveying the valley I had settled in before beginning to build. Yeah, that's always you really should look around a lot before you start building. He says, I wanted the tower to be revealed through the trees as one entered the valley, so we saw that already. One thing I feel I did well, so you see how the path kind of bends around a bit and the tree is in front of it. So we saw that right away. But I ended up setting it too far back and off center. I don't know, because look, this is the start of the path, there's nothing there. And there's no... well, we'll see. When we walk out, we'll see. He says it's off center and too far back. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But because it's an open area with no other builds, like, you can fix that by changing or building other things around it, if that makes sense. If it's off center now, you can build other things to center it. Like if there's too many buildings on one side and not enough on the other, then you just build buildings on the side where there isn't enough, and then you balance it out. So it's something you can fix later, I guess. He also says, the tower is about what I wanted, but the atrium is far too small, which forces me to build the other buildings on the ground to be too small to match the scale. Oh, that's an issue. If you want the tower to be the main thing, and you've made that too small, then everything else is gonna be too small. Maybe enlarge the tower somehow, if that's possible. Alright, well, we'll keep reading this. He says, I also didn't plan the top of the tower well, and the only method of transport to get there is to climb a water stream. The top features a dome that is too small to be seen at all from the ground. The pavilion at the front of the tower can be fully seen from the top of the tower, but the Celtic knot pattern is not obvious enough to be seen unless it is pointed out. Yeah, a Celtic knot using giant squares is not easy. I should have varied the materials more in building it. Okay. He also says, for the rooms inside, I kept them to rooms that are useful with Minecraft: a storage room, enchanting room, bedroom. I did not plan my storage room well, as I did not realize until afterwards that the dimensions were awkward. I also didn't like the idea of fitting a room that is surrounded by windows with chests. Yeah, because usually if you've got windows and a good view, you don't use it as storage, right? Usually the back rooms are storage, and then the front rooms are in the living areas or anything like that. So if you've got a nice view and you just put chests all over it, then that's a bit, you're wasting the view basically. He also says that's probably just my hang-up though. No, it's like if you have a nice view, then you have the opportunity to make it into a nice room where you can see things. And if you just fill it with chests, then it is a wasted opportunity, in a way. He says, I hope to rebuild the tower one day closer towards the center front of the valley and plan the rooms better, especially the atrium and the top of the tower. I actually intended for it to be an exercise in resisting symmetry, and you can see I did that very poorly at following this goal. I hope my build gives you a good example of a way to use past mistakes to learn from. I will share my updated build at whatever point I complete it. So okay, so I mean, first of all, Marti's got a very good attitude for a designer. Like, he builds something, and then he's honest about it. Like, he's honest about things that he doesn't like. And, as I said in an earlier vid, the first step to learning is to first accept that what you're doing now is not right. It's not the best. Like, you can't improve if you think that you're perfect already. So, you have to accept that you're not perfect, and then you can learn. So Marti's got a good attitude there, but let's see if he's right. Let's see if it's a little too harsh maybe, or if he's about right. Oh, there he is. So there's the tower. We should probably stick to the path. So you've got other houses there, other buildings there. I don't notice it being off-center. So it's mostly stone, and he has said that maybe he should vary the materials. That's pretty much symmetrical. So he's got the courtyard. There's no paths leading from the courtyard to the side houses though. A little bit odd. Maybe more roads will be prettier, but that's not a huge issue. So it's got one road there. Is that the Celtic knot on the ground? I think it's meant to be, but again, it's very, very difficult to... Yeah, I think that's supposed to be a Celtic knot. Very, very difficult to draw circles with squares. Like, it sounds a bit funny when you say it like that, but it is difficult to draw circles with squares. Alright, so it's got an entryway. Interesting arches and glass. He talks about this being something like an old civilization that was once grand and elegant, but through the years things have become more simplistic. He says that, but there's a lot of glass. And maybe it doesn't matter in Minecraft, but in the real world, glass is quite expensive. Especially large areas of glass is quite expensive. I think I've said this in other videos. Yeah, I have. I've said this in other videos as well. Like, you can tell how rich a particular culture is, or how technologically advanced a particular culture is by the amount of glass they have. Just because, and like how big the pieces of glass are, just because it's so expensive. Alright, let's not go down. I don't think we're meant to go down. Let's go up instead. Interesting. So there's a library there. Is that unfinished? It looks unfinished. Library there. There was a chest on the other side. And we can come up. That gets a little bit narrow. I'm not sure if that's necessary. Like, it's you squeezing down a little bit the ceiling height there. It's grass outside. Interesting. I don't know if Marti actually has looked up any has done any research on ruins or anything like that. That might be a good idea. Just just go to Google image search and just look it up. to see actually why. Oh, I see. So he says he didn't plan this well. There's no staircase up there. You have to climb the water column. Let's try that. Like sometimes if you have an idea, it's a good idea to just go to Google image search and just look it up. So if you go to old civilizations or ruins or things like that, you get a lot of ideas, and sometimes you don't even realize what you don't know. Like it's only when you do the search that you realize that you don't know certain things. Like you see them in the images and you say, oh, that's what it is, or that's what so what happens when people, for example, in old civilizations. Oh, there's the Celtic knot. Yeah, so you can see it up here. That's alright. So what happens in old civilizations a lot is, and especially in Rome, like during the Roman Empire, obviously it was very rich, and a lot of big monuments and things were built there. But then as the Roman Empire declined, things fell out of repair. And what people do is they'll take materials from old buildings and use them on their own houses. So they'll demolish the old ruins to repair their old house because it's cheaper, right? Like the stone and bricks are just there. The garden mine entrance at Bedrock. Yeah, so then they'll basically plunder the old buildings to build their new buildings because it's so cheap. It's right there. Instead of going to the mountains and carving out a new piece of stone or marble and then using that in your building, why don't you just demolish the existing marble building and use it, right? And if it's abandoned, then nobody's gonna care. Well, I guess some people care. So what happens is, like, during certain periods in Rome, a lot of old buildings were basically destroyed that way. Not because of invasion or barbarians or natural disasters, but just because of people being lazy and picking up the materials and using them for themselves. Oh, are we there already? Okay, so there's a garden here. The trees haven't grown yet. And the mine entrance down here. Okay, so there's the mine entrance there. It's interesting. And there seems to be a lack of mass in this build. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. If you look at actual stone buildings, like you can feel the mass, or you can see the mass rather, because stone, like all structural materials have a certain strength, right? You can't have a thin tube holding up a giant stone block, right? So in order to hold up a giant stone block, you need a fairly substantial column to hold it up. So that's the structure. And here with Marti, there's a lot of very thin stone columns. Like you see that? Like they're all single block. And the whole thing feels a little bit thin. It doesn't feel like a stone structure. And it's one of those things that you see these columns are way too thin for something that high. Like you won't do this in real life, or you can, but what happens is the slightest earthquake will collapse the whole thing. So this is real world structure I'm talking about, not Minecraft architecture, of course. But if you see enough stone buildings, or if you've studied structural engineering of some sort, then you get a feel for how big these stone columns have to be in order to hold up something like that. And when you don't have it, when you don't have the proportions quite right, it looks a little thin. I don't know if Marti noticed that, but again, like if you go to Google image search, like you look up a Greek temple and you look at the size of their columns and the proportions, like how many columns there are, how thick they are, and how much they hold up, and then compared to this, then these are obviously thinner than they would be in the real world. So maybe I'm just thinking, like, how would you know that without someone telling you? And maybe you don't. Maybe you won't know that until somebody tells you. But again, it's just doing the research and trying to figure things out, or trying to, like, you're not going to the pictures to find an answer to a question you already know. sometimes you go into the research to find out whether you don't even realize what questions to ask. So yeah, like if it were me, for a column that tall, I would automatically make it 2 by 2, at least, with a bigger base. I mean, you got a bigger base at the corners. Like I wouldn't do a single column that tall. I would do a single column, like even that. I guess that's kind of okay there. That is unusual. Okay, let's just have a look at the other houses around. These houses are much smaller. Very simple. And he hasn't done the ground. There's grass on the inside as well. Not sure what he's planning to do with these. I mean, these side houses look more ruined than the tower, which is a little bit odd. So here we have like much thinner paths, much smaller houses, and this is what he was talking about earlier, how this is supposed to be like an old civilization that used to be grand and now they're living more simply. This is very, very simple. Holy crap, it's a tiny room. Yeah, but he did say the issue with the scale. I don't know though, maybe you can make the houses a little bit bigger. But yeah, like if the tower was twice as big, then these houses can also be twice as big, and then these would look like serious houses. Chickens, he says. Chickens, you say. Alright, I don't think I have too much else to say. I mean, as he said, I mean he's already thought of a number of things that he can change to make the next build better. So, you know, I don't want to just keep piling on more and more things for him to think about. It's more, I think it's more helpful if he looks at his own build, sees what's wrong, and then improves himself. Because that's more useful. Because you know, I'm not gonna always be here to look at your builds to say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. The best thing for any designer is to learn to improve yourself, because then you can always rely on yourself. Like you can't always rely on other people to help you. But at the same time, it's always good to get a second opinion, of course. Yeah, so I mean, he's already identified a number of things he would do differently later on. Let's just ask him, Marti, would you rebuild this tower or build a new one? More varied materials, he says. The dome is not obvious from the inside. That's true, but domes are also different. Yeah, the domes are actually like domes. That's not his. It's not just his problem. Domes have always been a problem. Feels like a lot of wasted work, you know. Like in St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome, that's one of the things, like in the original design. Wait, this server. Yeah, like in St. Peter's Cathedral, the dome, like it used to be, it used to be square, and then they added the front part. I don't know. You can look up like the plan of St. Peter's on Google or something if you want to. So what happens is it was designed so that with the square plan, you could see the dome from every angle. But then they added a bit to the front of it, and then the bit at the front covered the dome. And so now, if you walk up and look at the front of the St. Peter's, you see this giant rectangle at the front, and you can barely see the tip of the dome at the back, and so then the dome is much less impressive now. So that's a story about the history of that cathedral, a little bit of it. But what you need to do is really, when you're building, always kind of come back down and look at it. So what you should do is you build a tower, and then what I would do is I would just get a bit of dirt and outline the dome. So outline the curve of the dome at the top, and then come back down and look at it from the front. So just to check what it looks like. So if Marti did that, then he would have seen it would look like this. So then he wouldn't build it, right? He would make a dome a bit taller, and then come back and check it again until you're happy with what it looks like from the ground, and then you build the actual dome. So this thing about sketching and then stepping back and looking at it, and then re-sketching and looking at it, and so this is important in the design process as well. So you don't just kind of build straight away and just assume it's going to work. You just kind of have to plan it out, test it, and then plan it out and test it, and then change it and plan it out and test it. So you want to be designing, and you want to be changing things as you go. So that's probably one technique that Marti could have used here to make sure things are okay. And maybe if he had done that for more of the design, he wouldn't have ended up with a final product that was not as good, because you would have tested it out along the way to smooth some of these things out. I try to show that in my own builds, in my own videos. I don't know how clearly it comes across, but you always see me with piles of dirt and just kind of lining things out, and then drawing lines on the ground, and then just sketching out the outlines of the building before I actually build things. That's what I'm doing. I'm always standing back and checking things out and make sure it's right. So what do you say? So the server resets the map every so often. For a new build, I probably want to do something in a new style, but I still want a tower. Yeah, so good to experiment. Yeah, so you experiment and learn. That's always good. Anything you want to talk about for the video, apart from what you've already told me? Yeah, so he's learnt quite a few things just from doing this and reviewing. That's the most important part, like looking back and learning from it. Well, it's important if you want to improve. I mean, if you're not interested in improving as a designer, then it doesn't really matter, does it? But yeah, the most important thing is to learn from each build, and so that the next build is better. Well, I've done more looking at real-life examples of what I was thinking of. Yeah, so I just said that earlier, and he's thinking that too. So he knows. Like after he's built it and looked at it, he knows some things that he should have done that would have improved it. So he's really good. Like he's really smart about this. He's thinking and he's learning, and so I mean he doesn't really need me that much, right? Because he's able to learn from his own mistakes. He says, I got the idea from a map that showed the monastery grounds. I wanted something with a tower instead of a cathedral. Yeah, so I mean he's got existing, or like he's got kind of real world architecture ideas that he's thinking about as he's building these. I ended up with something a lot less cohesive because I only ever looked at the map once. A map that showed a monastery grounds and no other examples. This was a map of a real-life monastery. I spelled that wrong. I think that's what he says. I don't know if he's talking about a Minecraft map or a real-life map. No, I just got the idea from... Wait, what? I just got the idea from one. Okay, I think... Yeah, I think he means a real-life monastery, not another Minecraft monastery. See what I mean? Yeah, in the vid I was also saying more research would be useful. I was really scattered about it. Yeah, like if like what he did basically was he had one idea, or even not one whole idea, like one glimpse of an idea, and then he tried to build it. And that's that's really not recommended because that's just too difficult. In order to, I mean, this is a complex thing. It's a huge building. I have to balance how much time spent on the other hand since I'm a mom. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I started this in my free time when my twins were newborn. Wow, how long ago was that? Maybe a long time ago. But yeah, like if you start with like one glimpse of an idea, and you try to build it, like it's not enough. Like you really need to kind of think about it more and work on it more, and really do more research. And because basically what happens is the more research you do, the more planning you do, the more thinking you do, the better the outcome is going to be. It's that simple. And it's not a matter of, yeah, it's like the main constraint of any design is how much time you are allowed to have in the research and the planning and the designing phase. Like the actual building is not the big problem, or is not the big determinant of how good the outcome is going to be. Well, I mean it is a problem. Like if if you kind of rush the building of it, but like the biggest contributions to the quality is in the conceptual phase. Because if you solve all the problems, if you solve the problems there, then the rest of the building will come naturally, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys if you haven't kind of studied the design process or the process of getting a building built. But there's the briefing, there's the concept, there's the development, and then there's the actual construction. So you design it, and then you build it, right? So the designing phase, if you solve all the problems there, then the rest will follow quite easily. Whereas if you don't spend enough time in the research and in the planning, then everything is going to fall apart on you later on because you haven't planned it out properly, and you find you have trouble, or you find problems along the way, and then once you've started building, it's much more difficult to fix problems than if you have the flexibility to change your earlier design, right? If that makes sense. So the planning of things is actually quite valuable. And for my builds, if you've been patient enough to follow all my videos, you'll notice that I'll look at the landscape, have an idea about what to build there, and then I won't come back to it for months. Or even the skyscraper, I built the first floor, and then I've left it for months, and I haven't built the second floor. What I'm doing is I'm giving myself time to gather ideas and think about things. I mean, I don't think about it actively all the time, but because I have the luxury of time, I'm just going to leave it and wait until I get a really good idea. Like, I don't have to rush. I've got time, right? So then I just leave it for several months, and then when I get a really good idea, I build it. So now I'm working on the Hollow Mountain. Actually, I don't think I've uploaded the vids yet. No, I haven't. But I will upload the vids later. Like the Hollow Mountain, I've seen that thing months and months ago, but I haven't built anything there because I don't have a good idea. So I just gave myself time and just left it and did nothing until I decided, okay, I've got a good enough idea now. I've thought of something now. And then finally, after all that time, I built it. So the luxury of time it's a luxury, and it actually helps you get better builds because you're not trying to rush something out. You're giving yourself time to think about it in your head and improve it over time. And Marti just said like she doesn't. I think I called her a he earlier on. I didn't realize. So apparently she has. Yeah, so maybe I don't know. Like not everyone has that luxury, of course, just to play Minecraft. I don't know how long I've been recording. I think I should leave it there. Hopefully, this is going to be an ongoing conversation with Marti because she says she might like build another one and then send another video maybe. But again, she says like she's kind of busy. Okay, what should I say to her before we stop the video? I think this has been... And she's an adult too, like she says she's a mom now, so I think it comes across in the way she is able to look back at her work and self-criticize and learn from it. Whereas I think younger individuals who haven't, had... Let's be serious. When you're a kid, your parents hand you things, and your teachers hand you things. You don't have to, work things out for yourself. That's just how it is, right? I was like that when I was young. And at some point, you have to learn to do things for yourself. And I think Marti has that, whereas, younger people might not. And that's something I guess you just have to learn as you grow up, is after a while, people don't tell you what to do anymore. You're expected to know what to do, or you're expected to figure out what to do for yourself. And as a designer, you need to do that. Alright. So yeah, I think this has been useful to look at. Yeah, not too much from me. Like she's able to learn from herself. Not too much from me, but as she said, maybe this is interesting for you guys to consider as well. Alright, I'll end it here. I don't think she has anything else to say. Yeah, so send your videos in if you got any questions or if you want to show anything. But not just kind of, hey, this is my mat, thanks. But actually, consider it. Like, my Marti didn't have any questions, but at the same time, she said a lot of things. She said her thought process and her thinking and her design process and all that, and so that's useful. So send in something useful. Don't just send anything in. Alright, I'll see you guys later. This is SCKChui's Minecraft Design School. You send me your questions and your save file or your server IP address, and I will give you architecture design advice and feedback. See the video description for more details. Seriously, you should read the description before you send me anything. Thank you.